This week we have a massive patch on our hands with huge changes to fighter and AD carries itemization, as well as plenty of nerfs and a few buffs too to get stuck into. Let's jump straight into our tier list predictions this week, and don't forget to check back next week for our update patch tier list video, where we run through all champions affected and who's been the biggest winners and unfortunately the biggest losers. Starting off with that top lane as always, and in the S tier we have Singed, Shen, Fiora, Camille, Darius, Olaf, Zac, Akshan, Jax and Tryndamere. Gangplank is being nerfed, but due to those crit item buffs, he's still going to be pumping out huge damage. Tryndamere is going to be pretty damn scary in the right matchups, and Yone and Yasuo both come up from C to B. So what is actually changing to impact the top lane this week? Well, the major thing is the item adjustments. First off, Grievous Wounds is being buffed across the board, so this will impact sustain heavy top laners, like Aatrox for example. AD carry and crit items are being hugely changed and buffed, hence why Tryndamere and Gangplank could be crazy strong this patch. But it's probably the fighter item changes that are likely to have the biggest impact in this role. Death Stance is being nerfed significantly, which, let's be honest, is probably about time. Ravenous Hydra and more of Mortius are now more made for AD carries rather than fighters, and Gordrinker is losing all of its ability haste. Blade of the Ruined King is also being nerfed too, so yet another popular choice for some top laners, which will inevitably make them weaker. Eclipse is losing its Omnivamp but now getting a chunk of ability haste, which is actually going to be super strong on certain champions. Black Cleaver is getting buffed too, getting more AD and health, and with so many tanks running around the place, it's likely to be a very popular choice this patch. If you do want to see the changes in full, then check out the patch notes on Ryze's website that we've linked in the description below. No nerfs for Jax means he's still going to be slapping a ton of games in patch 13.1b. Everybody expected him to be on that nerf list, but it isn't the case, so if you're a Jax main, keep abusing him while you still can. With AD carries becoming stronger this week and spiking earlier, this means Shen is going to be a great pick again in that top lane. His ultimate allows him to influence the bot side of the map like very few other champions up top can. And if your bot lane gets ahead, this means dragons, this means plates and towers, and yeah, you get the point. Some of Shen's more difficult matchups will also be slightly weaker with those item changes, so it's a win-win if you main Shen this week. Jayce takes a fair bit of practice, but after his recent buffs, he's been performing really well over the last few weeks, especially as you go into those higher ranks. Jayce is not only capable of being a fantastic bully in lane, but he scales like an absolute monster. If you get the hang of him, he's a brilliant champion to pick going into this patch, and for now, he's going to sit in the A tier. Let's move down into the jungle then, and in the S tier we have Echo, Zac, Elise, Evelynn, Fiddlesticks, Amumu, Vi, Nunu, Udyr and Maokai. Yes, you heard me correctly, Maokai and Udyr are going to keep their place in the S tier despite their nerfs this week, as we're just not sure these changes are big enough to dethrone them. We have taken them out of the God tier though, because they probably will lose a few % off their win rates, but when your win rate is around 55%, it's not exactly too much of a problem. So aside from those item changes we've discussed in the top lane section, the biggest change to the jungle this week is the nerfs to Demonic Embrace. Junglers like Maokai, Zac, Amumu and even Diana were just completely abusing this item, rushing it first in tons of games and dealing crazy amounts of damage, whilst also being exceptionally tanky. The nerfs to this item will make these junglers weaker, but due to how good they are, they'll probably still be just fine. Kindred has just been performing way too well in recent weeks, especially so at those higher ranks, so she's one of the other champions being nerfed in this patch. However, the nerfs don't really seem too big, so if you are a Kindred one trick, don't worry, you're probably going to be just fine. Plus, with those AD carry item changes, you might even be stronger than before. Second item Infinity Edge sounds quite delicious. Lillia is a champion whose buffs were long overdue. Now don't get me wrong, we all know how horrific she was to play against a little while ago, and she was stomping and winning so many games. But unfortunately for her, she got a bit overnerfed and has really struggled so far this season. Riot are increasing her AP ratios on her passive, Q and E this week, so be prepared to remember just how good this champion can be if she gets a bit too fed. Vi could be one of the best junglers to play in this patch. AD carries are possibly going to be OP now, so why not pick Vi who can shut them down better than most other champions in the game, with her point and click CC in her ultimate. Radiant Virtue isn't being nerfed yet, and Chempunk Chainsword is being buffed along with Black Cleaver. So if you've played much Vi recently, this is a fantastic build path to go for her already. Here's a quick heads up from me to you to pick her up if you haven't already tried it. Finally, with bot side priority probably being a bit of a big deal this patch, Nunu is also going to be heavily contested. He's one of the best objective takers in the game, and his early ganks can decide games so easily. Get a few gank spot, take some dragons, and before you know it, your AD carry is carrying the game without even thinking about it. GG, well played. Over to the mid lane now then, and in the God tier we still have Kassadin. Yes, he is getting nerfed, but we just don't think it's going to make enough difference. This guy is just way too strong with those improved mage items, so it might not be time to stop banning him yet. In the S tier we have Anivia, Cassiopeia, Akshan, Yasuo, Karma and Ryze. Ryze's nerfs this week are definitely a bit more impactful than Kassadin's, but we're just not sure if they're enough to bring him down from the S tier just yet. At those higher ranks, people are just picking him every single game and proving why he's such a hard champion to balance. Orianna's buffs are finally here, and these ones look a bit juicy. Riot are buffing her passive, her Q, her W, and her ultimate, so it's safe to say that these changes are probably going to make a difference. Orianna is such a fantastic champion to play, and to watch as well. There's very few abilities quite as satisfying as landing that huge command shockwave. We've moved Orianna up to the A tier this week, and let's see how she plays out. Zoe is another mid laner receiving buffs this week, and she hasn't really quite been the same since that big durability patch last year. Zoe is all about big burst damage and snowballing through games with her crazy long pick potential, and it's hard to forget those games where you get completely destroyed by a good Zoe. Her E is now going to reduce sleeping enemies' magic resist by 20 to 30% depending on the rank, which is pretty insane. Zoe, just like Orianna, is also going to move up to the A tier this week, but remember, she's definitely more of a one tricky kind of champ who usually does better at higher ranks. But if you do get good at her, she could be your pocket pick to finally get to that next ranking tier. Now we're going to move down to probably the most impacted role in the game with this patch, AD carry. And in the S tier we have Kai'Sa, Twitch, Caitlyn, Samira, Draven, Tristana and Jhin. That is a lot of champions, but here's why we think these will be the best of the bunch. If you weren't already aware, Riot are changing the crit requirement on Infinity Edge and Navori Quick Blades to 40% crit rather than 60%. This means you can now build these items second, and therefore you will spike so much quicker than before. Previously, you were forced to build filler crit items like Rapid Fire or Collector or even Phantom Dancer and delay your spike in the early to mid game. Now, if you get a few kills in the early game, you can have Infinity Edge before you know it, and then you're probably going to have some serious fun. All of the champions in that S tier are just going to love that second item spike, and they're really going to thrive from these changes. Other AD carries who rely on the attack speed sooner rather than later though can't really say the same thing, hence why they aren't in the same league. Draven and Samira are going to be snowballing harder than ever with these changes. Oh, and by the way, Essence Reaver is getting some pretty big buffs too, which probably means that Draven is going to be the most lethal one of the lot. Watch out for Essence Reaver Navori Quick Blades Ezreal too. This build is going to be even more spicy this patch. Unfortunately though, this does mean on-hit AD carries like Varus, Kog'Maw and even Vayne are going to take a hit this week. We definitely expect some Vayne buffs soon though, as even Blade of the Ruined King is being nerfed, which will make her even weaker than she already is. Don't worry too much though guys, because there's always periods of time where Vayne becomes super strong, so be patient because I'm sure your time will come. Lots of AD carries are also being buffed this week with small changes to base stats and also some mana cost buffs too. Sivir, Misfortune and Jinx are all definitely ones to watch out for, as sometimes all it takes is the smallest change to make these kind of AD carries back up and running again. Lucian and Nami are both being nerfed this week, so hopefully this duo combo won't be quite as oppressive as it has been. It's being played and prioritized everywhere at the moment, from solo queue to the pro scene, so let's see if these nerfs make enough difference to actually have an impact. The Essence Reaver buffs are really beneficial to Lucian though, so it will be quite intriguing to see just how much these changes alter his success rate. If you do want to stay up to date with those AD carry builds and runes and what's best to go for, then don't forget to download our desktop app by clicking the link in the description. Our champion page has builds, runes and guides which are all updated every single day, and if that isn't enough for you, we also have pro builds on there too, so you can import those setups from the best players straight into your lobby. Let's finish off with support now then, and in the S tier we have Janna, Amumu, Rel, Renata Glask, Blitzcrank, Bard, Rakan and Lulu. Sustained champions will be taking a big hit this week with Grievous Wounds being buffed across the board. And get ready to see those aggressive engaging supports making a comeback. Sona, Heimerdinger and Nami all moved down from S to A this week. The Donger has basically been stomping solo queue in 3 different roles. He's just been so strong for quite a while, and let's be honest, it's probably about time he got nerfed. The thing is with Heimerdinger is he doesn't really have too much counterplay, and when he's sat there on support permanently pushing, permanently poking and bursting down enemies under their own tower, it's just not really the funnest experience. Riot are nerfing his turret health and his base damage on his W. These changes are going to knock him out of the S tier for now, but let's see how he looks a week down the road. Rest in peace Yuumi, you will not be missed. Lee's favourite feline is being nerfed into the ground and she's already sitting at a very unimpressive win rate in 13.1. Yuumi is just not having a positive effect on League of Legends, and Riot are now giving her the nerf until rework treatment whilst they decide how to change her for the better. She is so disgusting in the pro scene to the point where teams have to draft around it every single game. If the comp allows for a Yuumi to slot in, the game is probably already over in Champion Select. She makes certain champions like Zeri completely unplayable, and in general you can just see how hard she is to balance. On the plus side though, it is quite exciting to imagine a modern League of Legends without Yuumi as she is, and as she has been, so let's stay hopeful for a solid rework to this champion. Unfortunately though for you Yuumi mains, it could be a little while until she's back to her best. With AD carries and hyper carries coming back with a vengeance this week, Lulu is probably going to be back up and running too. Lulu is and has always been just such an excellent utility support when AD carries are performing at their best. She provides so much peel and protection and turns certain AD carries into absolute monsters with her buffs as well. Lulu might not be the strongest laner in the world at the moment, but she still offers good poke and shielding, and of course her polymorph is a very strong ability. But it's really what she brings to the table in teamfights which makes her so damn effective. It can be incredibly difficult to shut down AD carries alongside Lulu, so if AD carries are as strong as everyone is expecting them to be, it could be your time to bring back that purple Yordle. And that's going to bring us to the end of our predictions for patch 13.1b and how it affects our tier list this week. We hope you learned a few things about what's to come this patch, and don't forget to check out the patch notes if you want to understand more for yourself. We'll be back next week with our update video letting you guys know who is really OP and who is not doing so well a week after the patch. In the meantime, don't forget to download our desktop app and get all of that juicy free content we offer and bring it with you into your next game. Thanks for watching guys, and as always, take care.